Hello. I'm echoing. How are you doing, everybody? Hope you're all doing fantastically well. It's Connor here. We are back with a press conference reaction. We are back with your evening edition of One Leeds. If you haven't checked out the video this morning, make sure you do so. It was in the car. And I know a lot of you don't even want me with all this fancy setup, all these lights, this camera, the action. You want me in the car like a scumbag I am. No, but that's a good start, isn't it? But yeah, no, it's nice that you guys appreciate the variation. The setting doesn't mean that much to you, which is great. Some of you think it's a big thing, others are not bothered. So I hope you're enjoying the consistency. We're trying to get as much videos out to you as possible, everybody. We'll have loads of Sunderland stuff tomorrow, so make sure you're tuning in. Also, listen, you know what to do. Merch link, description below. Well worth it. We've had 60 sales-ish in the first month. Well worth it. You guys are loving it. So yeah, make sure you do so. I'm going to be doing some giveaways very, very soon. I just need a bit of a break to sort that out and not game after game after game after game. But yeah, you can become a member as well, and you can become a Patreon member. We've got loads of stuff coming toward the back end of the week. So I wanted to get into Farke's press conference. I wanted to give you guys the big news, and then we'll get into a couple of your comments as well. And I wanted to get into some of the news that's affected Leeds United today. So let's start on the major news, and it's not what you think, but it is Everton. So Everton have breached financial fair play rules, PSR rules, whatever you want to call them now. The abbreviations are getting boring, and they've been deducted 2 points, which leads me to think, throw it out the window. And maybe we should have thrown it out the window. 2 points. They're not in the relegation zone. They're still out. And they've overspent to gain an advantage on other teams. And that's it. That's all they get. So the implication is massive that you've done something wrong. But then the punishment is an absolute joke. So when you try to abide by the rules, adhere to the rules, like Leeds United did whilst they were in the Premier League, you've had teams dotted around them who have broken the rules, and a lot of them are already in better positions, including Everton, than Leeds United are. So my message is, going forward, throw it out the window, and if Leeds get up, just spend. I'm not talking Ridsdale, but spend maybe a little bit beyond your means and just stay up. Stay up, overspend, because that's the message. Because the deduction, spending more outweighs the deduction. The deduction isn't a punishment. It's a joke. 2 points. It's a joke. So we're looking at that today as some major talking point. And the sanctions from this PSR group, from the Premier League, obviously based on PSR, are an absolute sham. And it leads to, when you're actually aligning with the rules, when you're actually playing within the rules and abiding by that book, doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. Yeah, the other teams will get a slap on the wrist, but that'll be it. That's it. And I just think seeing that today was a slap in the face to Leeds United, an absolute whip across the face. And maybe we just get up there and do what we do. Overspend, stay in the division, see what happens. We get a points deduction, we get a points deduction. It won't be that much. And listen, it's a dangerous way of thinking, but clearly that's how other clubs have thought, and other clubs will probably stay in the division because of it. So, yeah, unfortunately, that's what's happened today. I'm interested to get your thoughts on that, everybody. But that's something that's absolutely knocked me off today. We got relegated because we were dreadful last season. Nothing to do with breaking the rules. End of story. Just think about what you just said, Sam. Think about what you just take a step back and think about what you've just said for like 20 to 30 seconds and think of how other teams could have gained an advantage by doing certain things that Leeds didn't. That's what I would say. But fair enough, mate, if that's what you think. Sad to think we're relegated when Nottingham Forest, Everton, and Leicester finished ahead of us, and they overspent. Nida says they'll make an example of Leeds. Well, they shouldn't. They shouldn't do that. But yeah, I agree with you. It does feel like it's unfortunately the way of the world, doesn't it? Ricky says, evening all. Let's see some change tomorrow. Bamford out. Matteo will be the first step. So let's evening everyone. Says Jason. Make sure you're slapping a like on the video as well. Everybody, really appreciate that. So that was the first thing I wanted to speak about. Second thing I wanted to speak about, how mental is this? Literally, Leeds United will have one game left against Southampton when Ipswich have 3 left to play before they play Hull. Think about that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me say that again. Leeds United have one game left against Southampton before Ipswich have 3. Now, how do you see that? I see that as a bit of a positive. I see that as if Leeds have got the required results, big if, big if. But if Leeds have got the required results against some of these teams, and we have one game left, and Ipswich still have 3, knowing that Leeds United have hopefully picked up maximum points, that is a massive psychological hindrance, in my opinion, on Ipswich Town. I found out that today, and I could not believe it. I think that is a mental stat, literally, as I keep saying. But looking at the whole picture right now, we are at a disadvantage. You know, it's in Ipswich's hands. The fixture difficulty is very similar, in my opinion. I think Ipswich is running. You know, when you look at, I mean, I think I know it all back to front now. Obviously, they've got Watford, they've got Middlesbrough. In the next 2, Leeds have got Southampton and Sunderland. I think Leicester are up. Some of you guys might agree that they're up for me now. They're done. I think, you know, the game in hand, I think they'll win. I think they've got favourable fixtures coming up as well. Preston in there, Southampton in there are tough games, but I think Leicester will overcome that. That game in hand's massive. And yeah, we both did them a favour at the weekend. So it is, for me, it's a fight for second now, a complete fight for second, like it was in Bielsa days when it was 18-19, us versus Sheffield. That's personally how I see it. But I see the difficulty level of both teams as quite comparable. I know we look at it and think, nah, we'll get through that. But with the way the squad is at the minute and the poor performances in the last 3, I don't see, you know, level-wise, I didn't see that much between us and Watford at all. As in, we were similar level. We're similar level to Hull. And we're similar level to Coventry. That's worrying because throughout the whole season, we've been levels above them. Even the Coventry first game, I heard something today saying I was really impressed. I think it's Phil Hay said he was really impressed with Coventry the first game. I completely disagree with that. Coventry stayed in the game, but Leeds should have had that sewn up 3 or 4-0. You know, you look at that first half, Rutter, Cree, Somerville. That was a really good first half from Leeds. I completely disagree with what Phil Hay said there. You know, they were really impressive at Ellen Road. They stayed in it, but they were much better the other day than they were at Ellen Road. So in those games, I've always thought Leeds were a level up. But now the worrying thing for me is since the international break, we've been on par with these teams. I look at Borough, I even look at QPR away, and I think we've got to really step it up. Oscar did a video as well, and we are going to be doing the debrief, everybody, on Wednesday this week, because obviously the game congestion, can't do it tomorrow. But Oscar made a really good point, and he said that something has to change now, because it's not an evaluation of the whole season. And people keep saying, in 2024, we've only lost 1 game. Why is that relevant? This is why people look at form tables, because it's the recent games. The recent games are indicative of performance, you know, and all this sort of stuff, mentality. So the last 3 games are the most relevant. You know, 5 games, okay, yeah, you can go to a stretch, but 5 games was probably like 2, 3, 4 weeks ago now, wasn't it? The last 3 games have been very, very recently. Last 7 to 9 days. They're the most relevant, and they're the performances that you need to be looking at right now, you know? So for me, there needs to be a change. Something needs to happen, whether or not that's personnel, whether or not maybe it's a bit of a change in structure. I don't know. But listen, Farke has addressed a lot of this today. And I think today it was the best and the worst of his press conferences at Leeds. And I want to get into why I think that is. But the major news is that Ampadu is likely to be out for this one. It was a major doubt. Now, there's 2 ways I'm thinking about Ampadu here. I'm not overly panicked because it's Sunderland, and that's without any disrespect, but I'd be terrified if it was Southampton. I'd be terrified if it was Middlesbrough away. I would. No doubt about it. But a home game against Sunderland, I don't look at any sort of striker they've got, and it doesn't panic me at all. You know, we're not looking at a Ross Stewart as of a couple of years ago at Sunderland. That would have panicked me. But, you know, I do look at if this was a different sort of game, especially if it's an opponent who are just going to dominate possession, someone like Southampton, I'd be really, really worried. I think Ampadu being out of this game and then being set for the rest of the games is okay for me. I think it being a home game is a big positive as well. Sunderland haven't really got much of a threat apart from the two obvious ones in Bellingham and Jack Clark. Obviously, Pritchard was a threat, played against Leeds beforehand, but now he's gone to Birmingham as well. So a little bit of a difference there in their midfield setup. But yeah, so Ampadu I'm not too worried about. But I do then worry about potentially who's coming in. Cresswell, we've mentioned on the three things that we learned the other day that I would love to see him implemented in a game like this because I would love to see Leeds get better on set pieces. Leeds are in the bottom 2 for set pieces. Once again, I'm going to let that lie with you. Okay, we are the second worst teams when it comes to set pieces in the division. These are fine margins. Fine margins that you need to work on to get promoted. Guess who aren't in that bottom 2? Ipswich. Guess who aren't in that bottom 2? Leicester. You know, we are the third most dispossessed team in the division, and we've been brilliant going forward. Of course we have, but that is very, very indicative when it's based on stats that when we get into that final third, we are wasteful because we've scored a lot of goals this season. But to be the third most dispossessed side in the attacking third is indicative of Leeds being wasteful in the final third. And I look at all the front three for that. Obviously, Rutter gets dispossessed a hell of a lot, but he makes things happen. Dan James gets dispossessed a hell of a lot, makes things kind of happen. Somerville is largely on the Rutter side as well. But, you know, Bamford's involved in that as well. But Kamara's involved in that as well. There is a large portion of this Leeds United side. You can put the fullbacks in there that in the final third are dispossessed way too much. We shouldn't be in the bottom 3 for that start. And we are. So all of these little incremental things that Leeds can get better on is interesting. Because if we're bottom 2 when it comes to set pieces in the division, we're looking at a lack of potency when it comes to balls in. Have you noticed any crispness, any whip, any accuracy on any of the balls in from corners and set pieces? I saw them at the weekend when it came to Firpo delivering those lovely balls in from free kicks. But aside from that, not really. I think that the balls in, the connection on the ball, as I've just mentioned before, the whip, the variance is awful. I don't think it's good enough whatsoever. I'd like that to be worked on, but I don't think it is because it doesn't seem to be a problematic stat for Daniel Farke or his staff, or maybe it is and we don't know. And they're working behind the scenes, but it doesn't seem so because we're not seeing any incremental sort of development there whatsoever in set pieces. Leeds are woeful. At points, we might as well just give the ball back to the keeper. So the positive here is that if there is someone like Cresswell coming in, that could change our fortunes. If you are getting someone who is positively on set pieces, that one person who can outswing, inswing, and hit it on the money, the penalty spot, with a bit of whip, then that's fantastic. That's an incremental development in what you're doing. You've got someone in the box who can header the ball, and you've got someone who can actually put it on a sixpence for him. So maybe Charlie Cresswell is that body that comes in. Maybe then we see Joe Rodon go to left-sided centre-back for tomorrow's game if Ethan Ampadu is out. Do I think Joe Rodon can do that for this game? Yeah, I do. I don't think Sunderland are going to press us into oblivion where Rodon's pressed on his left foot. So he's going to have to come out. He's going to have to be a bit proactive because Cresswell isn't that defender. Cresswell's then probably going to have to be the coverer because Rodon's not as comfortable coming out with the ball, but he's better on the ball than Charlie Cresswell. And Cresswell needs a yard or two because he's not that quick. But then at least what you do get going forward, where you would expect Leeds to be much better going forward because we're against the lesser team who are in 13th with nothing to play for, is when we get these set pieces with Charlie Cresswell in there, like we saw Alan Millwall, where he was there and he got a fair few. Well, he was a massive problem for opposition teams with Millwall, with him and Juicy Jake Cooper going up for corners, being there for free kicks. He was an absolute nightmare. They were a nightmare, and they almost built set pieces around Cresswell and Cooper for large portions of that season. So that is an incremental positive for Leeds. That is something where if Ampadu's out of this side, Cresswell can come in and be physically dominant there when it comes to defending our box, but also attacking the opposition's box. So I see that as a big difference and something that we can look at. So when I'm looking at Farke's press conference today as well, and I'm looking at, he was saying some really, really good things. So like at the start, I was fully engaged with what he was saying. He was winning me over like he was selling me a car. He was saying how he's completely wedded to this part of the season and not letting the players focus on it too much, but also he feels he is the right man for the job when it comes to this point in the season. You look at Norwich's runs in their previous 2 campaigns. I believe in about his last 5 matches over those 2 spans, I think he's lost 1 game or drawn 1 game in about 10. So that gives you a lot of confidence in terms of going into these last 5 games. The difference is he's never faced a challenge like this for Norwich. Sheffield United was probably the closest that he had to that, but they were miles in front. So it's a different challenge for Daniel Farke as well. A very different challenge for Daniel Farke. And it does feel right now that Leeds are suffering with niggles as well. Glenn Kamara, Connor Roberts, Willian Yonso, Ethan Ampadu. And there'll be a lot of players there, everybody. Listen, you'd be surprised by how many footballers carry a hell of a lot of niggles for 5, 6, 7 games and don't say anything. Case in point, Pascal Stroud for pretty much the past 12 months. So Rutter as well, another one, hernia. So I really enjoyed what he was saying about mentality. I really enjoyed about what he was saying when it came to close-knit group and them not really being influenced by anything else. They know what they can do. They believe they can do it. And they're not going to let this season go to waste. He did sort of mention the playoffs, as in like that wouldn't be the worst case scenario. I think as Leeds fans, we have trauma from that and probably would believe that it is. But he then spoke about something which I didn't think I'd pick up on today. And once again, we have to put these disclaimer in for a fair few snowflakes in the building who literally don't listen to a word I say. So I'll make this as clear as possible. This isn't a Patrick Bamford smashing. This is me reacting to what Daniel Farke has said about Patrick Bamford. Listen to that 3 or 4 times, then it might get through your head. Sorry, everybody, for that. It might sound a bit rude, but the amount of rude comments I get who take me out of context, don't listen to a word I say, and then just make their own narrative on a little 3-second bit that they've picked out is insane. Trust me. So I have to say that about 3 or 4 times. Patrick Bamford, he was discussing the very big beginning of the season, him being able to get the best out of strikers, Daniel Farke. There's nobody else better than Daniel Farke to get the best out of strikers. And at that moment in time, he was talking about Pat Bamford. He was talking about Joel Peru. I don't know if I'm fully on board with Daniel Farke being successful with this season. I think Joel Peru has got 12 goals. I think he's done okay. I'm not 100% sure at that in that conversation at the start of the season. When he was talking about Peru being in that striker mold, I wouldn't ever agree that I was that on board, as you guys know, with him ever being a striker. I think he's a very different profile, something that I was banging on about from September onwards. So, yeah, 12 goals, great. But those clutch moments, which once again, I've gone on about since September, Joel Pro doesn't do enough of. He doesn't get Leeds back in the game. He doesn't win Leeds games when backs are up against the wall. And there's still time for that. There's still a lot of time for him to do that if we are in the playoffs or there's a 0-0 against Southampton. He gets the winner in the last minute to send us up. Unbelievable scenes and then fantastic. But from the plethora of games so far, 41 games, Joel Pro, when he's featured, hasn't done that enough, or when he's come off the bench, hasn't done that enough. Now, something to also point toward when we're talking about minutes from substitutions. Leeds are in the bottom 5 in the division for minutes for substitutions. Once again, I'm going to let that sink in. So when we are giving Willian Yonso 6 minutes off the bench, when you've seen Joel Pro come on with 2 or 3 minutes to go in a lot of games, even when Leeds have been struggling, this is not really giving you Willian Yonsos, the Joel Perus, that much time to get up to speed. And it's very, very difficult to impact a game with, sometimes 200 seconds on the pitch. It's just ridiculous to even think that. Daniel Farke, I praise his rotation and his subs. I think that he's developed a little bit, but I still think as a coach, he's got a hell of a lot of work to do when it comes to the timing of his substitutions. So that's not helped players like Joel Pro. The substitution stat I found mental because it feels like we bring on subs all the time, but the minutes they get on the pitch is actually quite narrow, quite small. But he was speaking about Bamford as well. So Bamford we have to talk about alongside Joel Peru. So I'm not 100% sure he's developed him as an out-and-out striker, as Farke was sort of calling him. Not an out-and-out striker, but Farke was talking about him in that press conference as a striker about 3 months ago. I don't think he's really developed Joel Peru. And I think Peru's got a lot of development as well in himself to do, over the course of how many years he's going to be a footballer. I think there's a lot of sort of gaps in his game as we'll sort of understand there. Pat Bamford. Now, I understand him defending him. Completely understand that. And nobody from inside the club, we can say whatever we want from outside the club. You're hearing the Durbrains on social media again saying, we can't, you're not a Leeds fan if you don't think that every Leeds player is the greatest thing since Jesus. It's ridiculous. Of course, as a fan, as a paying customer, you can criticize a player, as long as it's not abuse. As long as it's not abuse, that's my line. And that's why I came out after the Liam Cooper tweet when I called him a bozo and apologized on here and apologized essentially on social media as well, because I shouldn't have done that. But I'll always try and leave abuse out of it. It's not really abuse, is it, saying bozo? But there we go. Like, I understand how some people might that might be splitting the line a little bit. But Pat Bamford, I've never done that. Haven't. I've criticised his football, but at this moment in time with Pat Bamford, if you just want to make it into an obvious numbers game, he's scored 3 goals in 10, got 1 assist in that time, and his performances have stunk out the joint. They have stunk out the joint, and he's the spearhead of our attack. And since the international break, I saw someone say today he was impeccable going up to the international break. I don't know if he was impeccable. He was good. He was decent good. He wasn't impeccable. But post the international break, he's been god-awful. Absolutely god-awful. And he's also missed 2 massive chances for Leeds United in his last 2 games. Daniel Farke was coming out and saying, well, he runs around more than anybody on the pitch. He ran around he said in his press conference today, he ran more than any Coventry player, any Leeds player. And he's done this, that, and the other in terms of running and endeavour. And nobody's questioning that, Daniel. And this is where I was listening to his press conference and I thought, I don't know what he's going on about here. I don't know what, this is completely irrelevant. Because no Leeds fan, I've not seen anyone say, yeah, he doesn't run around enough. He's lazy. And Farke was almost, I think, teetering round him seeing stuff regarding articles online. He's definitely reading stuff online, 100%. Because he took this narrative, I felt, from what he'd seen online and what he'd read. So he seems to think that there are fans who are saying that he's lazy, he's not doing enough. Nobody said that. Nobody said that at all. And he started talking about how he's skinny and tall, and that can sometimes be a problem for defenders. And I'm like, Daniel, I get what you're doing, mate, and you should never, ever, ever call out from inside the club as a manager, whatsoever. Shouldn't be doing that, 100%. And he's bang on. And he's never going to do that because he's a professional and he's very good at what he does. And ultimately, he's a good human being, Daniel Farke. But it's nonsensical, in my opinion, to say that fans are criticizing him for his work ethic. They're not. They're criticizing Patrick Bamford for not being incisive enough, for not being sharp enough. I think he looks knackered. And in front of goal, I think he looks so below average at the minute. It's ridiculous. And I think most centre-backs right now in the division, if you put them up against Patrick Bamford, I think they'll be able to deal with him quite easily. And we've literally got evidence of that. We've got evidence of that from, I know he scored against Sheffield Wednesday, but the whole Sheffield Wednesday game, he was completely out of the picture. The Rotherham game was completely out of the picture. I'm talking about the relegation threatened teams here. So statistically, the worst centre-backs in the division. The Rotherham centre-backs dealt with him fine as well throughout that game. And then you're looking at the games in the last 3, the most recent ones, where they've all dealt with him perfectly well. And then we've seen a young lad come on, and a young lad who's terrified all of them. All 6 of those centre-backs, they've been terrified by this young lad who's come on. And then to add 2 other centre-backs to that pie is the Chelsea centre-backs as well, who probably cost combined, the transfer value is probably around 60 to 70 million quid. So I understand what he's saying, but context also needs to be applied. He was also speaking about Matteo Joseph, and he was almost suggesting that the fan base are bigging him up to a point where it's, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's uncontrollable how much our young players are being bigged up. So what I was gathering from what Daniel Farke was saying was he's not going to change Pat Bamford. He really likes Pat Bamford in there, and Joseph is going to get a lack of minutes. So I think that's absolutely fine if you're Daniel Farke. No problem with that. My problem is there is a potential that if there are more big chances missed and there is a striker who's out of form, Farke mentioned confidence today as well. So let's be honest, his confidence is rock bottom, which it should be at the minute with 2 massive chances missed and 3 really poor performances. Like he did with Joel Peru, it's a meritocracy. Take him out the team. But it doesn't feel like he's going to do that with Pat Bamford. So if Pat Bamford is to put in some more honkers of performances, then that's on Daniel Farke. because he's putting him in. He's putting him in the firing line, and he's continuing to put in stinker after stinker. Now, I hope Pat doesn't do this. I hope Pat comes back and scores and scores and scores and scores and fires Leeds to promotion. Brilliant. And that would be very indicative of Pat Bamford, because he's always been streaky. So if he now goes on a streak till the end of the season, fantastic. Do I personally see that? No. But if he does that, brilliant. Okay. Does Farke? I just wonder if Farke is willing to take that risk. As I've mentioned, the risk should be compiled by the upside versus the downside. The upside of Joseph coming in is much greater than the downside of leaving Patrick Bamford out. And I felt today, unfortunately, I felt today Farke is just scraping at the barrel of sort of excuses to keep him in the side right now, when we all can see as a fan base he needs taking out. And you've got an absolute dog in there who wants to come in and prove his worth, and has done it for club and country, really, when he's been featuring over the past however many minutes. So I don't know what this reason is for Daniel Farke to want to keep Bamford in. I feel like it's pretty obvious he's going to be in for tomorrow, probably in for the Blackburn game, and Joseph doesn't really stand a chance of starting. I don't know why that is, but it is what it is with Daniel Farke, and that is what disappointed me today, because I did always think of that M word, meritocracy. I thought when Peru was performing quite badly toward the back end of 2023, and Leeds had lost the game, he was taken out, Bamford was put in. Bamford is now performing really badly, and you've got someone chomping at the bit to get in. And it doesn't seem, I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem like right now Daniel is going to take him out. And I don't know why that is. When you're talking about him being a problem for centre-backs because he's skinny and tall and almost rangy, if that's what we're talking about right now, I'm a little bit worried with 5 games to go. What are we talking about? Is that an attribute? Like being skinny and you got to be skinny and tall and actually be competing in the air. You got to be holding the ball up well. You got to be winning flick-ons. These are all things that are absent from Bamford's game at the minute, probably due to fatigue and a lack of confidence. But I was just a bit disappointed with the rhetoric today that we shouldn't be bigging up young players as almost world-class, which nobody's doing. And we shouldn't be looking at Pat Bamford's game and thinking he's performing poorly. And it shouldn't be a common consensus that that's the thing, because he is performing poorly. He needs to be taken out of the firing line. And as much as we criticise Bamford, we should also look at Daniel Farke if he keeps him in the team. And then at some point, if we're being really, really brutal, there is potential. If he is to miss a couple of big chances, which we know is in Bamford's locker, he could cost Daniel Farke his job. That's an extreme way of looking at it. But the amount of managers that have been wedded to Patrick Bamford blows my mind. The fan base being as wedded as they are to Pat Bamford blows my mind to another level as it is. I've never seen a player backed as much as that. Off the pitch, it's fantastic. The Leeds fans are a credit, but I do not understand why there is such large pockets of the fan base that he can do no wrong. And especially when you've got a lad on the bench who will come in and make us better as an overall, I think, right now. I've been waffling on for long enough, and I really want to get your comments in, everybody. There's loads of people here commenting in. So let's have a quick look at what you're all saying. I'm just if Cooper and Bamford start tomorrow night, we're going to have serious pace problems. Pace is what we're lacking at the minute. Connor woke up and found violence. Go on, lad. I'm happy that you're enjoying it. Farke will see that Perot scored against Coventry. That will prove him right. Do you know what as well? Perot, an interesting one. If you were to ever play Perot, or Peru, I should say, and Joseph up top as a front two, that'd be quite nice. Perot just in that number 10. As if we're talking about a 3 in the back at the back, which may help, a Liam Cooper as a left-sided centre back in that back 3 or whatever, and Cresswell on the other side and Rodon in the middle or whatever, and then you've got a front 2. That'd be so interesting, wouldn't it? 'Cause I feel we've got the wing backs to do that, a midfield 3 there, and then if you were to put Peru up there with Joseph, now that is a big change. I understand how that is a big change, but Peru and Joseph are number 10. With almost just an out-and-out number 9, a terrifying number 9 in Joseph. I'd love that, but I know that's not going to happen. But can we work around that somehow? That's something that would intrigue me. I've been saying subs at 60 minutes for some time. Subs great stat. Connor was quite obvious. In all reality, we have to win all five. Five Bamford needs benching. Look, Connor, I can run around a hell of a lot on the pitch like Bamford, but it's getting to the right place that counts. Keep getting your comments in, everybody. Ryan says, same Bamford runs all the time, the same as saying we score. It's irrelevant. Yeah, I agree. Ricky, really appreciate that, mate. I've just seen that you've joined the membership. You can become a member as well, everybody. It really helps the channel. Joseph was the only one that plotted Bamford on his back when he missed his shot. Bamford wasn't good enough 5 years ago. Saw Benjamin Bloom talk about the fixtures near the end of the season. Says he'd basically rather be in Leeds' position than Ipswich. I love Ben. I love Ben, and we've had him on the channel a lot. I think he sometimes plays to this Leeds United crowd, doesn't he? He knows where his bread's buttered, does Ben? He knows the bigger fan base and where he's going to get those views. But no, I think, look, we'll have Ben on at the end of the season. He's a lovely lad, and I think he's brilliant. So yeah, we'll have Benjamin on 100% or post season. But yeah, I think it's a cat's cock hair between Ipswich and Leeds now when it comes to the fixtures. But yeah, I just think I think with Farke, I loved what he said in terms of mentality, loved what he was saying at the start. But this whole thing, I didn't like what he was doing about the youngsters potentially being, like he's essentially saying you don't overhype the youngsters to a ridiculous level. And you get that with some, once again, it's not people who disagree with me. There's loads of people here who disagree with me. And once again, to just solidify that is why we do these this fan show that I did the other day. You want to come on and argue with me? I'm not going to argue with you because I'll respect you because I've got a brain, but I will 100% get you on. If you disagree with me, I put links in the chat and just come on, say your piece. I don't care. I did it post-match the other day because it had just been Coventry. I decided to do it, and probably the most heated moment that I would have expected a lot of backlash from what I was saying. I put the link in the chat 400 times, and you don't get any of the ones who talk and have goes at you online. None of them come on. None of them. So I'm encouraging you, if you disagree with me, listen, we can be respectful of each other. If you disagree with me, come on. I don't care. Let's have a chat. I'm a big boy. We can have a conversation about it. So please, when we do the talk shows, get involved if you disagree with me as well. Don't be a 5-year-old and just put abusive comments in the section below. Get your big boy pants on, click the link and come in and we can have an actual conversation about it. Listen, that's absolutely fine with me. No problem whatsoever. Football, I always say, is subjective. I can completely disagree with you, completely. But yeah, let's try keep it, above board. And if you disagree with me, get on these shows. Let's have a chat about it. I got 3 people on this channel who I thought would disagree with me constantly. Dave Brown, KG, and Gabe. Those 3 people, the reason I had them on the channel is because I wanted them to disagree with me. I don't have them all agreeing with me. Never happens. And listen, it is what it is. I got those 3 on to disagree with me because I know I'm not always right. That's what you do. So I just wanted to put that out there as well, because you'll get quite a few people in the comment section below giving a lot of it after these shows. Click the link and let's have a proper conversation about it. How about that? Okay, keep getting your comments in, everybody. Connor, you know me, Connor. I do mark. It's all about the players, whoever is selected. I like that, mate. I like that. I know you are very much like that. Do you think the playoffs, Connor? Seeing your post today on point. Show's open to everyone. Jake, get yourself in, mate. Get yourself in. 100%. You can get yourself in. It show's open to absolutely anybody, mate. People think I select people. We had about 12 people on the other day. I don't have time to select people. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. But Louis says, not really sure on Farke's comments since he's played Archie every game and always praised him. That's a really good point. I agree with that as well. And I'll tell you what, strategically as well, something I'm going to fire at you guys. Connor Roberts tomorrow. Archie comes out for me. Listen, let's be brutally honest. Against Jack Clark last time, it wasn't good, was it? He got absolutely cooked. Say it how it is. He got cooked. Absolutely cooked. I thought he struggled against him. And Jack Clark was going left. He was going right. He was sending poor Archie into a spin. And I think right now, what we're seeing at this moment in time, with Archie is a downturn in form, something that we said on the channel post-January. I wanted us to get a right back in to help him. We did get a right back in. I was raging when Spence went because I was like, what, are we just relying on a young lad now for the rest of the season? I think Archie right now is experiencing burnout. I think he looks knackered. Absolutely knackered. I think you've seen it even in his turning. Off the back foot, Archie is relatively quick. I think at this moment in time, he looks half a yard slower. So he's played a lot of football with England. He's played a lot of football with Leeds in 2 positions. And I think it's been a big learning curve for him. But, he needs to develop a little bit more, of course. And I think right now, even if you take him out for a game and put him back in, I think that's the right move. Right now, Connor Roberts, an experienced player who, let's be honest, is an SHIT house, and we all absolutely love him. He's ready to go. And I know I think you said he was carrying a niggle today or something like that, but fine. The whole squad with 5 games to go are all carrying niggles. That'll be Ipswich, Leicester, Southampton. They'll all be carrying, but you just have to push through at this point. Easier said than done, but you've just got to do it. Unless you've got hernia, unless you've got a hamstring, a groin, whatever, you just push through. And that's what these Leeds players have got to do right now. But when I'm looking at Connor Roberts, he's strong. He's very, very athletic. I think he'd be able to deal with Jack Clark. Jack Clark is still a young boy in comparison to Roberts. And I think that battle is one that I'd feel very, very confident in. I think he'd get the distances right. I think being a Premier League right back as well, it'd come up against, obviously, wingers very similar to Jack Clark in terms of the directness. And I think that pawn is a really, really, really interesting one that Daniel Farke needs to move around. Because exactly like Louis just said, someone like Archie, in my opinion, needs to be taken out the firing line right now. I think he's really, really struggling. So you take him out, you manage him well, and you put an experienced vet in there at this level and at the level above as well. So that would be a big change for me. Let's go through the team. So I'd be starting Illan Meslier. I'd be putting, and listen, big performance needed from him as well. Big performance needed from him after that first goal at the weekend. Right back, Connor Roberts. Centre backs. It's so difficult. Obviously, Joe goes in, but do you move Joe to the left or do you put Joe on the right? And then do you put Cresswell in there on the left, or do you go with Liam Cooper? Do you go with Liam Cooper? Once again, a cat's cock hair. I'd love Cresswell to go in there, but then I just worry about the balance between Cresswell and Rodon. They've not played together. I think Cresswell would offer so much on set pieces if we get the delivery right. Oh my God, the fine margins we need for set piece. I think he'd be a brilliant addition to that defensive and attacking line. A big boy, a lot bigger than Ampadu as well. So he'd help us in that respect. But then you've got Cooper, who in the odd game, I mean, I've said he shouldn't be playing anywhere near for Leeds in 2024, but I'm looking at the opposition and I'm thinking they're not going to be as worrisome for me as a Southampton or a Borough. Cooper in this game, I think Leeds are going to be dominating the ball. But do you know what? I'm going to say it. I'd move Joe to left centre back because I don't think they're going to press on him that much. So I don't think his touch is going to be that strenuous when it comes to coming forward with the ball. And you can always get Cresswell covering him as well. I'd have Cresswell and Rodon back 2. That's what I'd do if Ampadu's out, which I think he's going to be. Left back, the ever reliable and responsible at the minute, Junior Firpo. In the middle, I don't think Glenn's been good, but I think Archie just looks beaten up right now. So I'd be putting Glenn and Elia Gruev, who, look, I said this against Hull. I said he's not going to come. I didn't think he'd have come in against Hull and just relieved of us of all these midfield pressures we're feeling with obviously, Slater just inverting from that right back position. Morton as well, Seri. I didn't think Gruev would have just magically helped that. A lot of fans thought if you bring Gruev in, it's all going to change. It didn't against Coventry. It was more of the same, really. It was midfield dominance from Sheaf, O'Hare and Casey Palmer and Eccles. So, yeah, I think Gruev comes in. We need to see a little bit more from him. Right, I'd be starting Nonto every day of the week, twice on a Sunday, I should say. Every day of the week, twice on a Sunday. I don't think he'll do that. I'm going to say what I think he'll do. Central, obviously, you go with Jorginho. Left, you go with Crescencio. And up top, I'd be going with Joseph. Now, that's what I would be doing. A lot of you will look at that and think, bloody hell, Connor, there's a lot of change in there. There's about 4 changes. But I think right now, they're going to have to make 4 changes anyway. You know, if you're taking Archie out because of how much he's suffering at the minute, which I think he is, the centre-back department is going to have to change with Ampadu being out. Obviously, that midfield pivot's going to stay the same. Are you going to keep James in instead of Nonso? I think that's the one he's probably going to look at. But Bamford, I think he's going to keep with as well. So let me go through what I think Daniel Farke is going to do. Melee net, Archie right back, Rodon Cooper, Firpo. Midfield, I think he's going to go with Archie and Gruev. No, I'm not, because I've just put Archie right back. I think he's going to go, sorry, it's got mixed up there. I think he's going to go Glenn, and I think he's going to go Gruev in that double pivot. I think he's going to go James, Rutter, Somerville, and Bamford. That's what I think he's going to do. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Everybody interested to hear what you think. With Coventry, the second goal was not due to the right back being in place. Yeah, I meant the first one. Didn't he say Roberts and Nonto aren't ready to start till? But it'd be interesting to see if he actually means that, or if it's just a little bit of mind games there. Alex says, don't disagree with you. Roberts starting, Bamford dropping to the bench, but unfortunately, I don't either, mate. It'll be Cooper. As I agree with a lot of you, what you guys are saying. Jake says, I think Leeds have the advantage over Ipswich that you play 4 games in the same day period, but we only play 2. Seems to be the other way around recently, but the chances you put pressure on that. Yeah, guys, if you've just joined, I said this at the start, and Jake's quite right, that when Leeds have 1 game to play, Ipswich still have 3. So when we're playing Southampton, when we're getting ready to play for Southampton, they're still getting ready to play Hull. If we get maximum points, if we go on a run now, that is insane pressure on Ipswich. And we know they are mentality monsters and they've come through it, but we'll wait and see. Connor, Anthony, Perot, Joffy. Do you know what that is, Michael? They're quality options, real quality options. But like I said at the start of this video, everybody, and like you quite rightly picked up on, Michael, when we are the 3rd bottom team for minutes played by substitutes, it'd be nice to see Anthony get more minutes. It'd be nice to see Perot get more minutes. I need to see more moments from Perot, winning games when it's very, very narrow, getting us back into games when it's very, very narrow. This is what Perot should be judged on. He was judged to fire us to get back to fire. He was the marquee signing. We beat Southampton to get him. Russell Martin, who's worked with him before, we beat Southampton to sign him. We've got him. You've got to start him. But you can't. You can't right now because of those clutch moments, which is a problem. Subs have got to be used sooner tomorrow if it's not working hard enough. Connor, also we play first every game till last. But listen, Martin, there we go, and it's been a theme through Ipswich through the start of this. They have pattern subs, but when they've got full bodies back, you know, we all know who comes on, we all know who goes off. A lot of the time, it's the attacking trio who make way. But we all know what happens. The opposition know what happens. But what Kieran McKenna does is he gives the substitutes a long time to make an impact. We saw they'd scored, I think they'd scored 13 goals from substitutes. You know, that and set pieces has to be worked on for that incremental advantage. But as I've said at the start, everybody, I think Bamford's the big one for me, but I'm not just solely focusing on Pat Bamford. I'm not, even though I think he should come out. James comes out for Nonto for me, and I think the Jack Clark threat is nullified, in my opinion, by Connor Roberts. Listen, would he start Connor Roberts? I don't know. He said that they might be out till Borough, but they were on the bench the other day, so you feel like they could have some impact in proceedings. Good point, Connor. Also, how much is our subs bench worth versus the rest of the championship? Well, listen, Woody. What we spoke about the other day was Mark Robbins, the Coventry boss, just praising Leeds as every manager seems to do, but looking at the bench. And still the other day, looking at the bench in comparison to what Coventry have to bring off the bench. And this is why I talk about quality and caliber, and Leeds having to overcome your QPRs, your Middlesbroughs, your Blackburns, your Sunderland, because Leeds, we always moaned about this in the Premier League. We can't cope with these teams. Your Man U's, your Chelsea's, we can't cope with them. And I know the gap is obviously so much wider between the top of the Premier League and the bottom of the Premier League. But right now, in terms of resources, we might have 5-6 players injured, but we've still got bodies in. Crease Somerville goes out, Jaden Anthony comes in. The impact's less, of course it is, but Jaden Anthony is still a quality operator at this level. Jorginho Rutter goes out. You've got Joe Gelhardt, you've got Peru, you've got Nonso who can fit into that cam role. Patrick Bamford goes out. You've got Peru in that 9. You've got Matteo Joseph in that number 9 as well. And, Willie Nonso has played up front for Italy and in a shadow striker role for pretty much his entire time with the national side. Wide right, look at the options there. We've got options there. The midfield, you've got 4 rotation options right there normally. So really, when we're looking at it, a team in this position, the top 6 positions, when you look at someone like a Cresswell and a Cooper as deputies for Rodon and Pascal and Ethan, they'd be going like that. Teams in the playoff picture, or your Sunderlands or whatever, teams of that sort of caliber, your Coventries will be looking at that going, bloody hell, that's brilliant. I wish we had that, because we have more depth, we have more resources, we've spent more money over time than these clubs have. So we should be getting through this. So for me, the problems are right now maybe a little bit of mentality, but a little bit of fatigue. But that can be solved by effective rotation and effective substitutions from the start and throughout. Guys, that is going to be me. We'll be back with your Sunderland stuff tomorrow. If you want to see me at the game tomorrow, I'm going to be there in the South Stand, and we'll have a live instant match reaction, obviously, from our friend Gabe, but I'll be giving you my post-match thoughts as well. We'll have you 3 things on all that sort of good stuff. It's been an absolute pleasure, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. You want some bonus bits, Patreon, YouTube memberships, hit the join button. It's been an absolute pleasure, everybody, and I'll see you on the other side. And we'll go for a prediction 2-1 Leeds. Get in there.